Do we have any, did someone say they thought that John was coming?
He said he felt up to it today.
Okay. Okay. If you don't mind, if you would please bow your heads. Dear Father God, we ask that you
This
with us
conference
and every
will
day,
now
Lord,
be
that we might
recorded.
do your will, that we might demonstrate that we can be the hands and feet of Jesus in our interactions with the folks in our community and everybody we come in contact with in our daily life. In your name we pray, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
We have an agenda in front of us. Do I have a motion that we approve the agenda? So moved. A motion by Commissioner B.J. Gibson, second by Commissioner McCall. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The consent agenda, there are 3 items on that. I think there was some documentation sent to each of us earlier in the week by Jason. You've had a chance to look those over. Is there a motion that we approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A motion by Commissioner McCall,
Second.
second by Commissioner Ivy. Any discussion?
I got a question.
Okay.
Kelvin, is this number 8, is that closing out the 3-year grant, past grant period? And this is that for that?
Yes, this is out of that, this is out of the aging,
Oh, it's out the aging.
This is
I
the-
see aging.
I believe this is the heart of the aging funds.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought it was the home, the community, you know.
No, that's the, single family rehab.
Okay, all right, thank you. I'm okay now.
Okay, I'm looking at what was sent to us, and it shows some home improvement loans. We have a motion and a second to approve these items. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Next on the agenda, item number 3, discussion about the American Rescue Plan funds. Mr. Patterson, sir.
Okay, a couple of things with it. And as a matter of fact, I've got another webinar this afternoon about a different aspect of the rescue funds. Every time we go to it, learn something new, and every time I learn something else we can't do with it. It's hard to find something you can do with it, but it's real easy to find something you can't. In the program, in the federal guidance, it does state that you can go off and you can provide economic grants for businesses that were impacted during COVID. So that's why we were looking at doing some things through the EDC. We were also looking at doing some different individual programs. However, it was also brought up in a more recent conference with the School of Government. That's fine that the federal government says you can do that, but the state government, state law does not allow for that. We cannot provide business grants, period, unless we're getting a good a service from them. We can do business, but we can't provide business grants.
When you say state grant, what's the difference with these funds? The state and federal funds?
No, this doesn't matter about the money. We don't have the state authority to do it.
Okay, you'd have to, okay.
But it's federal money, isn't it? Yeah.
Correct, but
Very
we don't have
sad.
the ability under state law to do it.
Okay.
That is very sad.
It is what it is, but that's
Yes.
interesting.
And also, constitutionally, we only have the ability to benefit individuals to the point that they are poor and unfortunate, I think is the term under the state constitution, which has been defined as low to moderate income, which is basically how we allow for social services. So we need to, whatever individual programs we do, they have to be targeted to they have to have an income-based target.
Well, that's more understandable than the business thing. Just,
Right.
That makes sense.
So what we'll continue to do is, as we know of individual businesses that are struggling, or have been struggling, we can continue to point them up to the state for the state-run programs. But we can't do our own programs the way I'm.
So we have to go out and assess the businesses that we feel like really have been struggling and report it. What would be the system of doing that? Report it to you?
Well, with that, they just need to apply with the state programs. They need to apply to the state for their
It
business.
can be no grant from us. It
Correct.
cannot be from us.
Correct.
We had several businesses that applied and got some funds from the original funds.
Yeah,
Daycare centers.
Right.
Several, maybe 20, 25 businesses. Are those, that would not be eligible for these funds?
Something like that would be, because we did direct response to COVID. It was PPE, it was cleaning, it was things like that, and it was smaller grant amounts.
Yeah, there were small amounts.
But, you know, if there was an exposure at a church, and we wanted to go off and do some decontamination in that building, something like that could work because of a direct COVID response. But going off and knowing that this business has had a 40% loss of income in the last year because of COVID, we can't touch that.
Okay.
So with that, what we're looking now, with that, we have gone off and we have done a grant to church community services. And of course, that can go back out to individuals because that goes into their utility and rental assistance programs. And of course, their clientele there are going to meet the low and moderate income thresholds. And also it goes into, very distinct categories there. But because it's the low, moderate income individuals, we can assist people through that program.
well,
So-
what is this money, can it go to the hospitals and the prisons and, I mean, is it accessible to any of those institutions?
Well, like the hospital, they got their own
Oh, money.
slug of money.
What about the prisons?
That would go on through the state. So, and I know they're trying to work on their own COVID programs inside the prisons.
Cause they really got some problems.
Yes.
Well, I'm so disappointed, really.
Well, with that, so we've come up with a couple of concepts that we've been working on. The first one is through social services. And this is somewhat based off of they already have energy assistance programs. Yeah. And they're coming out with another utility program also, the state is. So there's funds in utilities and rental assistance, foreclosure avoidance out there already. So DSS came up with a program for an area that they saw a distinct hole in. So can I pull them?
So Kevin gave me a call about rescue funds and the potential to do something to help the citizens of Scotland County with those. And we talked, like he said, we talked about energy funds a little bit. But if you've heard me talk much about social services, we already have 2 programs, one year round, one during the colder months that help citizens with their heating and cooling costs. We already have that. And like he mentioned, and just so you'll know, because we can begin to spread the word, the federal government has also, will be releasing funds very soon for a water utility program for 1 year in response to COVID as well. And so we don't know what our allocation in Scotland County will be for that, but we do think it will begin in November. So that is called LEWOP. low-income water assistance program. So you'll get more information about that so we can spread that around for people. So we feel like utilities are covered pretty well in Scotland County. Typically, we don't even use the entire allocation for our utilities sometimes to help people. So what I pulled the economic supervisors together and the manager and said, what do we see as a gap here? We did some calls over to the free health clinic and some other services to see what they also see as a gap in Scotland County. And we felt like we see people that are either uninsured, just over-insured, and they fall in a gap to get things like glasses or hearing aids or prescriptions that they need. And so or dental care. And so we thought, let's see if we can work with that. And so what I've put together and what you see is our first stab at what a program could look in Scotland County coming through DSS. Of course, we feel like it would need to have some eligibility requirement behind it, some type of income requirement behind it, thresholds for how much households or individuals are allowed to use can be changed. It's interesting, we've never been told, hey, make a program, right? And so we were kind of excited about it. So we looked at how other eligibility programs work that the division sends down or the federal government sends down and work within those guidelines to a degree. We upped the, where you see the $3,000 gross income, that's above any of our current financial programs. That's above what you need to meet those eligibilities. So we feel we're going to pull a few more people into this by not just using what's already out there, by coming up with a little bit more. You can earn more and get this program, is my point.
But does that not go against what he was just saying about using the money for the low wealth? And I assume we're talking about ARP funds to fund this.
Yes, and some of that is, we'll have to verify exactly where those limits are, and some of that's going to be based on, we'll have to find a clear definition because there's really not one other than based off of a poverty limit.
Right.
But if depending on, we'd have to be able to show that this is a reasonable reflection of a moderate income individual.
And like,
In other words,
to your
we don't
point,
know.
to your point, the numbers are in here, just numbers we put down on paper and we discussed and talked about, so they can change for you to serve the citizens how you feel should best be served, remain within these American Rescue Fund guidelines. But we think we can make the structure for the program and we can run the program.
How about what's the timeline on all of this? As far as expending funds and
Basically, the funds need to be expended by December of 2024.
what?
24. So we have 3 years.
3 years from, all right, okay.
April, if this threshold is a little higher, but that still doesn't mean that someone who would qualify for some of your other programs could still apply for this, for assistance under this. What would that do? What would that have any negative impact on your other programs?
No. Honestly, with Scotland County choosing to run this program, the Division of Social Services would not be aware of it. I mean, we don't have to run it through them. They might be aware of it if it came up in conversation, but to say I have
But they would become aware of it because you're not expending.
they haven't given us any allocation.
Okay.
And when you determine eligibility for other programs like FNS, Medicaid, this wouldn't be considered income. And so that wouldn't go into that application either. So it would not affect their eligibility.
All right, so this is just, forgive me if it's not an intelligent question, but so they could actually apply for funds under both programs.
Yes. And that's how our energy and this water program will be now. You could be eligible for even the energy program level has been raised this year. You could be eligible for $1,000 worth of utility. Crisis funds, turn around and get another $300 or $400 payment to your vendor for heating and cooling costs. And now you can turn around, and I don't know what the level is going to be for the water program as well. So you could work various programs throughout the year to help with those things. And this would just be another one.
I guess is it possible they can apply for and receive more funds than they have expenses for their utilities?
Well, this program is not a utility program.
And then the others, one is no and one is yes.
So if we went just like you have it here, what do you think the allocation would need to be to cover the cost?
Well, it depends on how many citizens you want to serve, right? So we could do simple math. Kevin threw around general numbers, and they were from 100,000 to 200,000. We are going to serve as many people as you want. So whatever allocation you want to devote to this, we're going to serve people till it runs out, especially if we have several years to do it. And so, like I said, when we were just taking a stab at numbers, we came up with $500. You know, when we get into deeper conversations with maybe an eye care provider or a dentist office, they may say $500 might not get them an exam and a pair of glasses, or it might. So it may have to fluctuate based on that. Hope County's run a program like this for many years. Now, they just do it out of their general assistance fund, so it's all county funds. So I talked to their director a little bit and got a copy of their, I guess what they call their policy. So they have these vendor agreements set up with eye doctors and dentists. And I understand the way they are set up. The dentist understands this is the basic level of service that I'm going to get reimbursed for. And anything above that, I'm going to probably need to call because it's beyond what is in our vendor agreement. So I think those conversations will help us get a better idea of where do you level out with a certain person. Because if we make it clearly unlimited, we won't help as many people. But if you make it too limited, then they can't get what they need. So.
Well, I mean, I think it's a good idea. I think the big question is the income qualifier. We need to get an answer on that and then go from there. I mean, until we have that answer, I mean.
You said income 3,000 or less. That's what that's not.
Well, no, that's what she's saying on the
That's just what
proposal.
we took a stab at.
Yeah.
But what Kevin was saying earlier about has to be within that low to moderate, and I don't know what that number is right now. Off the top of my head, but it's less than that, I know.
Yeah, and a lot of it also depends on family sizes and thresholds and everything else for most of the programs, versus a simple guide, versus a simple fixed number.
We removed the whole element of you have 4 people in your house, so you can only have this much money. We just said, let's take that complication out. Everybody in the house is entitled to $500 worth of whatever service they need.
As long as it's under
As long as
3,000
it's
right
under.
now, if that's the final number. I mean, that, to me, that's the question, is that gonna be the final, the qualifier?
And I think
How do you find that number?
the easiest answer is because Hope County has a very similar program, kind of, what are they guidance, what have they been operating under? And just making sure that the state hasn't come down and said.
Now, that's using their money.
Their program has been in place for 15 years. And they just write X amount of money in their DSS budget, all county funds, and
But they're using county funds,
they're using
not
it.
funds that are subject to all these rules and
Right.
regulations.
That's the one that gets me.
Well-
What about the ARP part of it?
These funds, under ARP, because we can provide medical assistance.
Right.
So this program would fall under ARP, but the restriction on the state level for us assisting individuals is not tied to ARP. It's just, that's just what we can and
I
can't
got
do.
you.
period.
That's
And
just-
are you saying Hope County would be subject to the same rules? So if they're using whatever number they're using,
Right.
Yes.
should have been.
And you don't know what that number is.
Hope County doesn't have a number. The policy I got was about half a page. And so the way they appear to be running it is through general assistance funds, and it probably comes from, oh, a social worker went out and this child needs glasses, and Medicaid won't pay for that, so the director is gonna approve, okay, go get the child a pair of glasses, and they're gonna write the check. So there was no limits on income, it's just a director discretion, case-by-case type of program.
I like that program because it gives a chance for people that's not in low income to get a break, you know. People have been out of jobs because of COVID. You know, most of them won't even qualify for any of these kind of programs.
Now, with these programs, anybody who is already qualified for Medicaid or anybody who's already qualified for food stamps automatically would qualify for any eligibility or would qualify under eligibility for ARP funds.
Yeah, because their income's gonna be less than that anyway.
Yes,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that, and you could go off and have someone who is a foster child. You're fostering a child, you may have income double this amount, but your foster child is may still qualify for Medicaid. So that child may, depending on what an income limit is, you may still be able to qualify for this program for the child, not necessarily for the individual, not necessarily for the adult.
So if we served 500 people with that, at that limit, you're talking about $250,000. While that sounds like a lot, 500, I think a lot more than 500 people would probably fall into this thing. So we probably need to say, I don't know what the magic number is, but
How many people, utilize LEAP?
Oh, we've seen LEAP grow over the last few years. Last year was very different based on COVID. So everybody that was served, every elderly citizen that was served from 2020 was automatically served in 21, meaning they didn't even have to apply. A check was sent to their heating and cooling vendor. Then people could also apply, and we were given an additional allocation. We're spending close to $300,000 in LEAP, and that's in increments of $200, $300, or $400. So we could do the math on how many people were served.
Would you tell us what that program is you just mentioned? I don't know.
That's Low Income Energy Assistance Program.
Okay.
And it's the one, you may hear me say, it begins in December, and it runs 1 month for our elderly population and disabled population. And there are income limits. It coincides with food and nutrition income limits. And then from January through March, it's for the general public.
For the general public.
With income limits.
With
But
income limits
anyone,
again.
you don't have to be elderly or disabled.
I have people that call me all the time and say that, they want to, list for the energy program, but I didn't know what she called it,
And we have another energy program that runs all year. That is set up, is crisis driven. I say energy, and I shouldn't say that. It's a heating and cooling program. So if you heat with a wood stove, we're not paying your utility bill unless you have to have electricity to run the wood stove. So it's a heating and cooling program. And people misinterpret that often.
What income level would that be?
It's about the same as FNS again. It's crisis driven. And so you have to have a medical tie to say, I have to be warm at night and I have to be cool at night.
You said $200, $300, or $400. Is that a month,
One-time payment.
one-time payment?
And the crisis program this year is $1,000. But we only pay enough to alleviate the crisis. So if it takes $400 to get you heat again, you're going to get $400. Your vendor is going to get $400. You still have $600 kind of sitting over here, but we're not just going to send your vendor $1,000.
all right, so, and I'll just throw a number out there. If we set aside 400,000 of the ARP funds for this program, as you have it outlined here, as long as that's qualifies under the state program with the limits that you have set, with a kicker that in a special circumstance with the DSS director's direct approval, it could go to $750 for a person. So if you run across one of those, they gotta have, oh, well, they need 600 instead of. And that's not a motion, that's a discussion.
Sounds like a good motion to me.
I'm just trying not to miss something in it, but even still, that's 800 people if they all use the $500.
Does 800 people sound like that's way too much than we would serve, or not enough, or just?
You're asking, do we have the capacity to do that, like the
Do
staffing?
you have the
or-
need? Do you have the need for that?
Yeah, that's.
I think over several years, and we build up the program and we advertise the program and people get to knowing about it, definitely the potential. I mean, we're talking years here of people being able to use this. Yeah, I think what we may run into, because I didn't even realize it could last for years, what we may run into, do we want this 500 up to 750 to be an annual you can get? Like, are we gonna track this by person? For example, April Sneed came in this fiscal year, she's used up her 500, right? This next fiscal year, she get another 500. I might always have diabetes and I might always need insulin, right? Or
These
do
are
we
the
tap
kinds of
it,
things
or?
that people ultimately end up doing without
Because, right.
because of cost.
And my supervisor team and administrators, we'll do a lot of talking about that. We don't want people to abuse it, right? If they could get it somewhere else. But if we don't tap it, you won't serve as many people because the same people will come in every month. So it's, you weigh your options and choose which way you want to run it, right?
Thoughts?
Well,
I can say one thing, I'm very disappointed with this rescue plan, but, as long as some percentage of our population can use it, I guess we have to be satisfied. But I certainly wanted these, small businesses to get some of this money, to make up for their loss during the time of COVID. Well, we still got COVID, and, but it looks like it's not gonna be possible because Kevin cannot figure out, nothing in here that can give them some money. Kevin, I'm sorry, I won't try to put you on the spot. Okay.
I think that's an ever-changing target. They change it, next week it could be.
Yeah.
But then the week, well, I'll make it as the motion then, the $400,000 from ARP funds be allotted to this program as outlined here, as long as the qualifiers meet the state qualifications. With an exception, can allow up to $750 per fiscal year with the DSS director's direct approval for that person.
Can I ask you just a question on your motion? Are you wanting that to be for the duration of the funds, meaning through 2024, or for the first year?
No, I said fiscal year.
Fiscal year, okay.
Perfect, because I think the same ones that need this are gonna come back next year.
And we may reallocate the same amount of money.
And we may find up 6 months from now that we need to put another 300,000 to it or something, so, I don't know, but
Okay.
I want to make sure we're in that income thing so we don't.
Okay, we've heard Commissioner Ivey's motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? April, anything from you in regard to that?
I don't think, other than Kevin and I working out some detailed start dates and things like that.
Okay.
I'm sure.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Ayes have it. Thank you.
Okay. Next item, talking about,
Kevin, can we stop before you start that? Because I thought we were going to have a little more lengthier conversation on the ARP funds. That was the only thing you had it under the ARP funds?
no, the next item is,
Is that part of it also?
yes, sir.
Okay, I'm just reading item 4, if that's where we are or what. Or is that?
That's the next
Part of that, okay.
EMS is on here twice.
So it's kind of like a 3A, okay.
Yes. The next item, and I'll just get Robert Sampson go off and talk about this, but looking at EMS and some options there with these funds as well.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, commissioners, for allowing me to come this morning to speak to you. Had some conversations with Kevin over the last couple of weeks and really wanted to come to you today with a proposal and this proposal would be for an additional truck to our current fleet of 3 that we run 24 hours. And the reason why we're making this proposal is because, number one, the impact that we're having from COVID, and two, some things that we have identified as it relates to our response to various parts in the county. So I want to just take this opportunity to kind of give you some good information, some data that in hope will support the proposal that I've come before you today with. So the extended wait times at the emergency department as it relates to COVID, I think that's where we need to start. If we think back to the previous commissioners meeting, when the CEO, Mr. Greg Woods, come before you and expressed his concerns about the impact that the hospital was having, with lack of staffing, lack of availability with beds as it relates to the admission process of it. Well, if you really stop and think about that, when they started having those issues, it became a domino effect. Okay, so they don't have availability up on the floor to admit their patients. So where do those patients go? Those patients now start being held in the emergency room. Okay, as their admission holds. So those are beds that are being taken up in the emergency room. For the last several weeks, I get data from the hospital every morning as it relates to their availability. And there's day after day after day, I'm getting these reports out of a 35-bed ER, 36-bed ER, they got 15 beds available. So now you got to look at who's competing for those 15 beds. You have our EMS service, you have Marlboro County EMS service, and then you have the general public walk-ins competing for 15 beds. So the issue and what we discovered real quickly is when we were responding to calls, when we were transporting our patients to the hospital, once we got there, now we began waiting on availability for a bed to come open. So we went through and we ran the data, and what we discovered is on an average, we had an average wait time of 30 to 35 minutes. That is when we arrived at the hospital and we're basically just sitting there with the patient still on our stretcher, waiting for a bed to come available. Now keep in mind that's an average. There have been times that we have had to sit there as long as an hour waiting on a bed to come available. So what impacts does that have on us? So when our ambulances are there waiting, 911 calls are still coming in. We cannot respond to them because we haven't transferred our patient over yet. So we had to start thinking outside the box. How can we best kind of adjust to this? Fortunately, we do have a convalescent service, Braveheart, that is at an intermediate level. That is in our system plan to be a backup response to us. We're also very fortunate to have Cape Fear Valley Hospital, who has representation at the hospital now with a ground truck as well as a helicopter. So we began utilizing those resources to try to help us whenever we had these calls backing up. That does work at times, but we also got to remember if we're busy, who else is busy? They're busy as well. So in a lot of cases, those resources were not even available to us. So then it becomes me having to get out and respond to calls, just so that we can try to keep up with our calls so our citizens aren't having to wait for care. So again, just talks about the delay in the 911, in response to 911 calls. And then you got to think about the stress and fatigue that this is putting on our staff. It's in our nature. When you call 911 and those tones go off, we know we have to respond. So when we know we're in a position to where our citizens are having to wait for an extended amount of time for an ambulance to get to them, that puts a lot of stress on us because we know, okay, that could be our loved one. That could be your loved one. So that's the approach that we take whenever we look at that. So here's just some data I want to share with you. I went back and ran some numbers, fiscal year in 2020, and this data is coming from January 1 to August the 31st of 2020. With 3 ambulances, which is what we're currently running, we responded to 4,049 calls. An additional 68 of those calls were handled by mutual aid agencies. That could be Braveheart Medical, that could be Cape Fear Valley, or that could be outside resources. There are times we may have to contact Robinson County if they've got an ambulance available to come in and respond for mutual aid. So when you look at 2021, the same time frame, we have responded to 4,261 calls. An additional 71 of those calls were handled by our mutual aid agencies, for a total of 4,332 in comparison to 4,117 from last year. So if you look at the averages, on an average in 2020, we were averaging 515 calls a month. This year, the same time frame, we're averaging 542 calls a month. So as you see, our call volume is increasing. I went and ran some, I wanted to see, okay, with this increase in our data, okay, and I hope you can see it better on the handout. I apologize for that. I wanted to see, now that we know that we've got an increase, where is our increase at? So what I've got before you here is just to show you where we identify as our peak time when we are at our busiest point. And as you can see, when we get around 8 o'clock in the morning, that's when our calls begin increasing. Okay. That's also at the beginning of shift change for us. Okay. So imagine that we're right at shift change. We got crews trying to get off, crews trying to come on. We still got to, there's things that we have to do first thing in the morning. And now all of a sudden our call volume is increasing right at that point in time. But if you actually look a couple hours later to 10 o'clock, we really start going up and then we stay up. So we've identified that from 10 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. at night is our peak time. That's when we're at our busiest. Okay. Keeping in mind, we do work 24-hour shifts. So now our crews are actually busting at the seams throughout the day. With, as you can see, we start going down on our call volume after midnight, but not at a drastic decline like I would like to see. So now, come the end of the shift, our staff is really getting tired. I'm sorry, Kevin. So this is just some information that we found in GEMS, which is the Journal of Emergency Medical Services, that really just talks about fatigue in the EMS world. It's not saying that we're experiencing this, but just to kind of give you some idea of our profession and the impacts of our profession. A fatigued driver in EMS is or as bad as intoxicated or texting driver. They have more accidents. Fortunately, that's not us. But fatigued EMTs and paramedics crash ambulances, commit more clinical errors, and experience more injuries. And then fatigued shift workers are more likely to get killed or injured on the way home. There again, we're not experiencing any of that, but it's just kind of just to give you some information on the profession as it relates to the stress and the call volume that we are experiencing. So now I want to change gears just a little bit and talk about a concern as it relates to response times. Some facts, according to the American Heart Association, which is the governing body that we go by when it comes to our certifications that we hold, our CPR, ACLS, and our PAL certifications. We get those certifications through the American Heart Association body. So according to the American Heart Association, for every minute that passes without CPR and a defibrillator, the chances of survival decreases by 7 to 10% for every minute. That's going to be crucial here in just a few minutes. Also, the American Heart Association clearly states, and it shows that 23% of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests are shockable rhythms, okay? Or those that can respond to a shock if an AED or defibrillator is applied. So if we can reduce response times to the targeted area in our community, in a lot of cases by half, we will increase the chance of survival for these patients. Okay. So here's my proposal. My proposal to you this morning is to place a 4th ambulance into our rotation. This, I feel, will start the process of giving us more resources in our county so that we can better serve the citizens of our county. All right, the ambulance will provide paramedic coverage during the peak times, which I've identified for you, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. We will staff this truck with part-time employees. So I'm not asking for additional full-time employees to go to my department. We will handle this with the part-time staff that we have. So therefore, there's no request or no need for me to come and ask for more money. I will absorb that cost. The ambulance will be stationed on the north end of the county. We've identified the northern part of the county as the furthest point from our centralized base where our ambulances are currently held. So with that being the furthest point comes the longest response time. We've identified that the recreational center in Wagram would be the most appropriate place to station this ambulance for several reasons. Number one, when you look at the entire northern part of the county, it's as centralized as it can be. We chose the rec center because it's a county-owned property. So therefore, there's no expense there. Okay? The county already owns that property. So there's no additional infrastructure that will be needed. We're not asking to build a building or anything like that. We're going to use what we have. And it will also provide backup response to the central base ambulances. So what we would do is that ambulance is stationed in Wagram, but if our ambulances here get busy, we start running calls, then we relocate that ambulance. Okay? We get it to a halfway point to where we still got a nice response time to the northern part of the county, but yet we also got a nice response time if it needs to go anywhere else in the county to respond to a call. So when we look at our response time, right now, lights and siren, we average 14.6 minutes to respond from our base to the northern part of the county. That's wheels rolling in 120 seconds. We allow our medics 2 minutes from the time that the tones go off until that ambulance needs to be rolling. So when you take that into consideration, you add the 2 minutes to what we already know what the response time is, we're looking at over 16 minutes that it takes for us to get to the northern part of the county. Now, remember what I told you, what the American Heart Association says. For every minute that someone goes into cardiac arrest, for every minute without CPR and defibrillation, the chance of survival decreases by 7 to 10%. I want to fix that. Okay? My job is to try to fix that. So the ambulance station in Wagram will drastically reduce the response time. I think that's, pretty straightforward. By stationing this ambulance in Wagram, we can reduce the response time to the northern part of the county from 2 to 8 minutes. So basically, I can cut the response time up there in half. Okay? In half, in half automatically. Okay? So, again, this proposal allows us to be able to start working to improve the identifiers that we've identified. I'm able to do this and absorb the cost in my current budget. So I'm not asking for additional resources. I'm not asking for additional personnel. I'm not asking for additional funding. I feel passionate about this. I feel that this is something that's needed for our community. As public safety director, it's my responsibility and obligation to the citizens to make sure that we're providing the best services possible. And that's what I want to do. With that, I will answer any questions that you may have.
Well, I like the whole Wagram. I've thought for a while that that area needed to have like a satellite EMS unit or something somewhere. Talking about, are you gonna have to have enough?
We have 3 ambulances, as long as, and functional. We do have 3 ambulances that are typically what we call offline for that day. So this will actually pull from one of them, so it only gives me 2 backups versus 3 backups.
You're talking about backups. not
Yes,
active.
yes.
The other thing is, are you gonna have a QRV with that?
No. This will be staffed with 2 medics, so they're able to handle any call that's needed.
Okay. I know the only thing with the Wagram Center is, I guess somebody, 10 to 10, yeah, somebody had to lock it when they leave or something. There was no
Yeah,
way to
and
do
there
it.
would be some logistical things,
Oh, yeah.
that we would need to get the county electrician to to wire us up a shoreline up
Right,
there
right.
for ambulance to be able to plug into. So when we keep our monitor and all of our stuff charged, and then in the wintertime, summertime, we can keep the ambulance cool and warm. Because we do have that capability.
That was the other thing about keeping it in the weather during, especially bad times, to be ready to go. You
Right.
gotta keep it,
Right.
snow off of it.
That's right. And there's enough room there. We had to get one of those carports, metal carports, just to put up there to back the ambulance under.
And there's no room at, I guess it's whatever the way fire stations, there's no extra bay there.
I don't know if there's a free bay there. I don't know. There very well could be.
I think they only had 2 bays, and I think they got 2 or 3 trucks.
Yeah, they do. They got, I think, a Wagram City truck, and then they got a couple
2
county trucks. So,
That was just a thought, but I mean.
Yeah. and like I said, we actually rode up there and looked at this facility. They've got a spare room that's really not being used. That I think we could actually just kind of, utilize during those hours. And we're out of everybody's way, if you will, because they do have daily operations there. So we're out of the way of the public there. But yet we're in a centralized location on the northern part of the county so that we can better serve up there.
The only thing I would say is the people living around that probably need to know it's coming, and be real mindful of late at night or early in the morning. Of course, with those hours, you won't have a lot of that, but that they wake everybody up. When they
Oh,
leave
absolutely,
out. Don't start hitting horns and sirens till you're out.
Well, I mean, there's a rule of thumb. Once we get in subdivisions and things like that, we typically cut our sirens off, when we're in subdivisions or high residential areas, if you will.
It just
For
makes us
purposes
feel like
like
we
that.
live in the city. It just makes us feel like we live in the city.
Yeah,
All the
I think that would
sirens
be-
going off and
yeah,
everything.
Believe me, there's nothing better at my house when one comes by about 2 o'clock in the morning with horns and sirens, and ain't a car on the road with them.
Well, and truth of the matter is, I mean, there is a law, it's a general statement, there is a law on the books about that if we are responding to a call and we're running emergency traffic, if we don't have both lights and sirens going and we get in an accident, then we'll be held liable.
Yeah, I would, because there may be people that are going to bed at 6 o'clock. right?
Absolutely, yeah. So I mean, there is, from time to time, we have to have some
Pretty
common sense.
supportive of
Oh, I
having
do
it
too,
there.
but
Yeah.
That's
I
gonna
mean,
be one of those inconveniences.
not
everybody willing
against
to
it
live
at
with.
all,
So you're, right now you've got, how many ambulances? 6?
6.
And so you've got 3 on the roads all the time.
Correct. And then we have 3 that they're off their rotation. So we have 3 on rotation and 3 off rotation. So right now, the way we're doing it is that we 3 trucks are on rotation for 3 consecutive shifts, and then they come off and the other 3 go on for 3 consecutive shifts. Now, with me pulling one of those trucks off for this proposal, then we'll have to get creative so that our trucks we're giving our trucks as much downtime as possible.
So you're talking about taking one of those downtime buses.
Correct.
And put it on the road for 12 hours,
Correct.
7 days a week or 5 days a week?
7 days a week.
7 days a week.
Yes, sir.
And you're not gonna have to add any additional staff.
No, sir. We're going to do it with part-time employees.
Yeah, because this will be all part-time, and the part-time will be paid for out of the ARF funds.
I love this idea of you coming to Waco. Thank you.
Well, and there is gonna be a little bit of cost in it because of wiring in that electrical box.
Right.
We probably need to make some kind of concession to the rec center on their power bill. I mean, it probably won't be a tremendous amount, but something where it don't take from her budget.
Right.
Well, why would not those expenses be, can these funds not be used for that too?
Yeah, and some of that, like the shoreline, I don't know what it would cost. It probably under $1,000 because we can get, the county electrician to run a 30 amp line out.
Right, yeah. I
So
don't think
it's
a
not
problem,
really significant.
but, you know, I don't want
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we chose this rec center, because it's already, the county already owns the property. So any expense will be small, in comparison to the benefits that the citizens up there are going to receive.
would it make sense just to go ahead and get one of those carport type buildings and put it there? So, I mean, you're covered from the weather in the summer.
Yes.
You're blocked from the heat in the winter, you're blocked from everything else. And instead of just waiting and be 2 months into it and say, because you're gonna need it. It don't matter. You're gonna need it. Just to go ahead and get the thing put out there. I don't know where or whatever, but.
And that's something else we can.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna have to be near where that shoreline put at, so why not just plant them both at the same time and go ahead and put one up?
I agree with you 100%. Any other
Motion for
questions?
this?
Yes, sir.
Do you have a dollar amount?
Right now, we're looking, just personnel, we're looking at, 205,000 a year.
That doesn't count what little bit of power is gonna be, or if we put one.
Correct.
Those would be a one-time cost, right? I'm not
Yes.
talking 205, those would be 205. How much can you get on this building? How much is the building on? Carport building? Would you want one that's walled, or would you want one with a door, or would you want?
But as long as, only thing, as long as it's got a roof and it's tall enough. Yeah, and it's covered, yeah.
I don't even know how much that bought one of those. I have no idea what they cost.
Probably anywhere in the, anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000 range. I think 5 would be on the very high end.
I mean, I just think we ought to go plan for that. Because you're going to have to put it there.
Mr. Sampson,
Yes.
not to jump off this, but when you talk about the fear of staff becoming fatigued, are you still sure doing just part-time, you won't have to add in additional staff? I would hate for fatigue to become an issue that we have to deal with. I know you say we don't, but just thinking ahead.
Thinking ahead. And I think having this 4th truck, believe it or not, you wouldn't think just adding 1 truck will take the load off the staff, but it truly does.
Okay.
Just adding 1 truck really takes the load off, because you're going from, let's face it, your medic's going from running every 3rd call to every 4th call now. So it does help. Now, there are times, because if you get the bar, if you look on your graph there that Miss Betty has before her, this report actually come out of our ESO, which is our report writing system. And if you notice, that number is higher, it's 4,524. But where that's actual reports that have been done in that time frame. So imagine during the same peak time, we may respond to a wreck where that one ambulance is having to transport 3 or 4 patients. So that's why that number's higher than the actual numbers that I showed you, as far as the calls that we run. So we have a total call volume, and then we have a total patient volume, and that patient volume will be higher.
But you think about how far reaching, Nashville area, and Oak Hills, and all up in them hills,
That's
it's
a long, I've always thought there needed to be some sort of satellite up that way.
a different,
And I think this should lead to, and I don't believe that time is, that you just have it full time instead of just a.
Well, as he tells us, as he showed the need for it, they make it.
Right.
Yeah, I think just getting the footprint there,
I think we need to see the results.
that's exactly right. Yeah,
Well,
I think getting that footprint is important.
it may be that when you pull the 4th one off the road, your volume is down far enough that one of the other 3 can go up there.
That's a possibility, but one of the things that I also have to think about is when we look at the total call volume is where the
Where volume
majority,
comes from.
and you figure 70 to 75% of our call volume is centrally located. Laurel Hill in the Laurinburg area. So I don't know at this point in time that I'm able to pull one of the third trucks up there.
We'll let you tell us that when the time comes.
Right.
Now, I think you got to get it running to
Yeah.
see what the
Yeah.
goods are and what the bads are. But
There's always going to be pros and
Your
cons.
plan on this is that probably, I'm gonna draw an imaginary line, north of Sally McNair Road will be handled by that.
Yeah.
Well, and the other part of it is some of those, that bus is gonna have to be coming to Laurinburg now because you're at the hospital waiting.
And that's correct. I mean, you know, and
It's not gonna stay there when you.
that is absolutely correct, sir. Yes.
This is off the wall question probably, but Marlboro County, they have any plans of building a hospital again or anything? And that would take so much load off Scotland County.
To my knowledge, to what I know, the answer is no. And the reason why I say that is that Scotland Memorial Hospital has invested a lot of time and a lot of money into Marlboro County. So Scotland Healthcare System has established themselves in that county. So my initial response is I don't see it happening.
It's being served better now than it's ever been served.
Absolutely. And to add to that, and because right now, Scotland Memorial Hospital is on a full critical care diversion, okay? Which means they are not accepting patients from any other outside county, from the EMS world, except for Scotland EMS because they have to, because that's our sponsoring hospital in Marlboro County, because they don't have a hospital.
I remember the days when they had a very nice one. I don't know what happened. I was in that hospital for, a procedure, so I don't know what happened. But anyway, your plan looks good. I'm so excited that we're getting something in Wagram. I'm always excited about that.
Well, as the Wagram representative, would you like to make that motion?
Yes, sir. Okay. I like to make a motion that I'm gonna say it. That, where is it? Okay. That we, put into effect, wait a minute. How would I put that motion? I'm not sure. Kevin, help me with this.
I would just refer to his
His
proposed
recommendation.
recommendation.
Okay, all right. Proposed recommendation by Mr. Robert Sampson, Public Safety Director, involving the, new ambulance and part-time workers.
We have a motion from Commissioner Goldston and a
Well, I'll second it. I think we just need to add the part about the additional, the building.
Building, yeah, the
and
building.
outlet
Yeah.
to that motion. If that's okay.
That's fine.
Then I second.
I think Jason can put together the motion as it has been discussed. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you very much.
Sampson, good presentation.
Thank you.
Very good.
And I think I'm still up.
We'll just have any other discussion on recovery.
Stay with us.
We'll get you back in a second. With that, I have started conversations with the city of Laurinburg and getting in with their engineer. They're working through their own projects, their own utility projects also. So, but we have, the conversation has started with their engineer on what improvements we be able to make in our water system. Basically connecting water systems, making connections between some of our 5 systems so they can be reduced down in number and also give greater recovery flexibility, because right now, way it's worked off, if we need to close a valve for a repair, we can't backfeed some of the systems. But if we can make connections, we can backfeed in. But those are going to be some long-term projects.
And we're still looking at $1 million in that water system.
That was just a placeholder number that I put in there. I know it's going to be an expensive proposition.
But it
I don't
probably
have,
will not be, it probably will not be all of $1 million, will it?
I don't know.
And know what we can add.
At this point in time, you've not specifically allocated anything to those.
That was just what he put up originally.
Yeah,
So we didn't vote on that night?
no,
Okay.
that was just an understanding, because I was trying to come up
Some
with
ideas.
some reasonable expectations. It is not going to be inexpensive by any stretch of the imagination. So,
Let me ask you a question now. So that means that none of the ARP funds can be used to motivate people to take the vaccine or to, you know, any of that type of thing with dealing with COVID. We cannot use any of the funds for that purpose. can we?
well, that's one, and I believe, Eli's online also. But that's a conversation we've had with the health department, because that's not necessarily going to individual, but that is providing incentives for the medical crisis. So that would probably be allowable. And that's where we're looking at, and the health department has already made applications because the state already has a money card program out there. And we've made application to join it back in July, but we were not one of the ones that were chosen. But one thing that we had a conversation about is for people who would receive their first time vaccination is, okay, just as an encouragement in that, you can do this and you can get a gift card.
Mhm, that's right.
And you know, and this was just a conversation, a gift card costs about $3 to get on a larger scale, $2 to $3. What we talked about was the possibility of, okay, you get your first vaccination, here's a $25 gift card. You get your second vaccination, here's a $25 gift card. So it would be, for someone who would get fully vaccinated, it would be a $50 benefit at a cost of about $57 to the county, which would go back into these recovery funds. And because that is a direct COVID expenditure, getting vaccinated, providing incentives for vaccination, that would be a coverable amount. Because we can, under federal and state law, go off and respond to a public health crisis.
Right, yeah. Well, we certainly got one in Scotland County, as in most counties now. So this will come on the health department, you said?
Yeah, that we can do. And of course, it would require approval of this board if you'd like to do that.
Do I need to make a motion to that effect, or is that gonna come later?
Now's the perfect time for that. But right now, what we talked about was basically a $50 benefit for both cards.
But now, would they have to do this through the health department, or would it have to go to, because I know Walgreens are just doing tons of them, because every time I go in there, people are lined up, but.
Yeah. And that would be one of the things that we'll ultimately have to figure out if we're going to do that. How would we?
Or the hospital, even the hospital.
Yeah, how would we do that? How would we track that if we're doing if we're doing it through the hospital or through
Where the
Legion is? That would be very easy for us to track, but doing that through
Third party's gonna be.
it's gonna be, now, we can get something in with Walgreens. We could probably work with them fairly quickly. Or at least our local Walgreens.
Right.
And with the hospital, that would be also fairly easy to go off because we'd have to be able to get them to track who the funds went to.
And I'm sure they track that already, but,
Mhm.
I didn't want to disincentivize anybody for going there to the hospital or wherever else, because I know the way Walgreens is handling it now is the one next to Walmart gives the Moderna vaccine. The other next to Scotland Motors gives the Pfizer vaccine. So it just depends on which one you want. Just because when my wife finally decided she was going to she wanted the Pfizer, And she called Walgreens, so you have to go to the one next to Scott Motors. So that's the way they're doing it now. When I got it at Walgreens, it was at the one next to Walmart. So, but, it's just your decision as to which kind you want from them. I mean,
But they haven't said anything about a booster they have
no,
for McDermott.
no, none of them. I mean,
Walgreens is
FDA
giving
said,
booster shots.
So what?
Walgreens is giving
But
booster shots.
Pfizer, but not McDermott.
yeah, not
No,
Moderna.
there is no
But
Moderna
if they,
booster right
if
now.
they qualify under that special.
Special need,
Yeah.
yeah.
I can name several people that have gotten their booster.
And just make sure, we're talking about people who go in now to get vaccines.
Correct.
Not, I got mine 6 months ago, I want
Well,
to
that's,
get
you
them.
can hear that now.
Well, that is.
I got mine in April, I want my $50.
And also, once it's approved, you know, we would still actually go off and take it would still take time to get cards and everything else, because it would be a situation where we'd need the cards in hand.
If you're gonna do it.
Well,
in
so
advance.
next, how much are we gonna put on a list? Eli, do we know how many in the county still haven't had their first shot? He's on still. He was on. I don't guess he's on it now.
It's weird how somebody will get a first shot but not get the second.
You'd be surprised how many.
Well,
I know they're doing
I
Sure.
that.
don't
No.
understand that.
I got her finally talked into the first one, and she did it, and she didn't have a problem. The second one she had this week, because otherwise she didn't get a Germany. She's had a fit with this one.
And you didn't say this, but if she'd had that experience with the first one,
She wouldn't have had to say.
she would
And
have
yet
had
some people have no
Well, that might
effect
be
with it.
part of
Yeah,
it.
it
I
might
think that
be
is
at all,
part
Didn't bother me at all.
but she's
But
had
there's
a
a
hard
big
time.
gap
with
in
the second.
the number of people who don't get the second.
Okay. Okay.
Well, that's good. So,
So if we were to approve this, when do you envision the effective date being available?
If you were to approve that, talking with some of the banks, because we would go through one of the banks to provide the cards, I think they're looking at least a 3-week time frame to order the cards.
so then a month, we could be on our way, right? That sounds good. to
Do
me.
we think 25 and 25 is enough of an incentive?
I think,
I'm-
I
that,
don't know, I know that there
I
are
don't
other
know.
agencies doing incentive, but I don't know what it is, but I don't know what the
I don't know
amount
what
is.
the number is.
I know at one time they were doing 25, but I think some have gone up, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah. You hear different amounts.
Why did we not qualify under the state?
They only accepted so many programs.
Uh,
They only accepted. so many.
That's all
But that goes back to how many hundreds are we gonna reserve?
Oh, I know.
Do we,
Yeah.
you know, 'cause-
Go further with less.
right.
yeah, we're trying to reach as
But
many
you
as we
get more
can.
incentive to hire more, right?
But the second one, that's a total of $50. In 3 weeks, they can have another one. So it's really $50 for them, isn't it?
And this may be, I'd like to see us do, if we're gonna do 25, and I think these may not be the right numbers, if you're gonna do 25 for the first one, make the second one 50.
But we're gonna have less people participate if we go up that amount of money.
Well, and also some of it is of the people that are not vaccinated now. Some of them, I'll give you $200. I'm not doing it.
Oh, yeah.
No, for some of them, it's
Oh, it
not.
don't matter, yeah,
Yeah.
so, no matter what you're
Yeah,
gonna do.
then my
Right,
sense is,
I mean,
my sense is, it's, the dollar amount's not gonna make a lot of difference.
Right. That's true. I agree with that.
But you do have some people who go off and who know people who had reactions. My wife had a reaction to both shots.
Oh,
Just was miserable for a couple of days afterwards. And especially you have somebody who's doing that, hold on, I can't afford to get sick and not be able to go to work.
I had a daughter that had some complications with Pfizer.
So
But there has been an increase in people getting vaccinated.
it's slow, but it's continual. We're still doing vaccinations out at the American Legion building, and I think they did 75 last week, 100 the week before, something like that.
so that's
So it's-
ongoing. It wasn't just 1 week?
No, it's still going.
I didn't know. I was-
So our number should be going up.
I know every time I go to Walgreens, which is probably a lot more than I should, they're lined up in there to get it. They're lined up in there.
So this incentive may boost it a little bit more, and who knows, we may be out the door.
So I don't know how many's still eligible or how many people could be eligible, because I know you got to put a dollar amount on this limit, regardless of what you do for the size.
And that would be one of the things from you is how much would you want them, what's the maximum, and then what guidance do you want on individual amounts?
The program that the state had, what was the dollar figure that they used? Was it 25 and 25?
I believe so. I think it was a $50 benefit. Or I think they were doing it also with some of their Johnson and Johnson clinics, and they were just giving a $50 card.
If you had the one shot Johnson.
I know they tied that in with some of them, which they did. They had Johnson and Johnson. So it was just a one-shot clinic.
I haven't heard much about Johnson & Johnson.
Is there anybody locally giving the Johnson? There was at one time. I've just not heard that talked
I
about.
haven't heard it talked about at all.
I think it's predominantly Moderna and Pfizer here.
It's in the county, I think it's Pfizer and Moderna.
So you want us to give a dollar amount,
Well, I mean, we gotta put a number on it.
say $100,000, is that too much?
How much will,
I don't know.
50, you want the 25 and 25? 50 and 50?
Right now, we're still right at half the county has received at least their first shot.
that's half of the eligible or half of the county? Because I think we gotta talk about the number of eligible.
Yeah.
We got
Some under 12 aren't eligible, so how many is that number? And then how many of those eligible have not done it?
Right.
Because when compared to the whole thing, it's not right. It's
Right.
not given the right number.
Yeah.
And, but,
Hold on 1 second.
I mean, that's pretty simple math, but,
children may be eligible next month, so they may be in the pile number.
Well, they're in the, you can get the,
well, for every 5,000 people you do this, if you do it at 50, that's $250,000.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's gonna be more than 5,000.
No.
That would either do it or.
They're more than probably 5,000 eligible, but you're not.
Oh, you're not gonna get all,
5,000
no matter, like I said, no matter if you do it 1,000, it's not making.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it would be that high.
But if you did that same. Like you said, 25 on the first one, 50 on the second one, then you're up to the same 5,000, you're up to 375.
But that does encourage them to get the second shot.
Right, and then of course $500,000 if you do $100 a piece, so.
Well, it looks like we need to find out more information about the numbers and everything, because we're shooting in the dark right now. We don't know how many, What do you think?
Yeah.
I think we should wait and get the numbers correct.
yeah, and that's one thing about it also,
But it's gonna delay.
The longer we delay, the
Right.
longer it's gonna help us take the
And-
full start.
also with this is a situation, that depending on how everything else happens, you're probably really trying to push over a limited amount of time also. Because this is not a program that you want to run for 3 years. But this is a program that you're going to want to run through November. Getting people in and done fairly
Call the
quick.
health director, ask them how many people that haven't taken the vaccine and that's eligible, whatever. Can we call them? Ask them that question.
He was on there.
Yeah, he was on.
I think the safe number is 5,000,
I think,
planning wise.
yeah,
and it's probably not gonna be that many. So then that bears the question, if we spend $350,000 on 5,000 cards,
What do you do?
what do you do with the ones left over? What are we gonna do with those cards?
We better start at a lower number. You know, we probably don't need to do it all at one time.
Right,
till
but
we
you probably
see
order them in $50,000
Yeah,
increments rather than order up the whole.
the whole thing, yeah.
And that may be something you could authorize, we wanna do 50, okay, we'll order $20,000 worth of cards.
At a time, rather than ordering the whole thing amount at one
Yeah,
time.
I
Yeah.
think we've got information to go ahead.
I do too.
I think so, but I guess it's just settling on the amount. You want to do 50 or 75 or 100?
Does anybody have any thought about the 25 and 50 is, if that would encourage them to make the? to
I
get
think
the
that'd be a good number. I really do.
25 on the first, 75 on the second.
50 on the second.
I mean,
I'm 50
50 on the second, unless it's the Johnson, if somebody gets a Johnson, I don't know of anybody doing it here now. They were at first, but we gotta have an answer for that one. They just get
I have a-
They get the
75.
50, they get the 50,
They get 50.
they get the 50.
If they get the one shot. If they get the one shot, it's $50. If you get the two, it's 25 and 50. So it'd be $75.
Somebody wish to make that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Can you recite it for Jason?
I move that our incentive program for getting the vaccine would be 25 for the first shot, 50 for the second. If it is the Johnson vaccine, which is a one-time vaccine, it would be 50.
And that would put that, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but we gotta put a dollar total.
A total of $250,000.
$375,000, that's based on
For a
5.
maximum of $375,000.
One second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion?
Well, I was gonna ask before, is there a time limit on this? Or is it until the funds are expended?
That's what I would just still put through.
And the cards are ordered in increments. We're not gonna order enough card, you know, we're gonna do a certain bunch and
Right.
see how it go and then do a certain bunch. You know.
And it may be till the funds are expended or until this board terminates the program.
Termination.
Because we may want to terminate the program
At some point.
at some point. We have motion and second. Let me back up with further that discussion. If we don't put a deadline, if we put a deadline, would it help people make the decision to go ahead and do it?
Possibly,
Yeah, that would be another, so if you
Coming
say
in
the
the-
end of the year, or,
yeah, becoming
That may
the
help.
holidays. Mhm.
Okay, it's, yeah, this isn't, I'm maybe asking the motion in the second for for it to be, till the money is exhausted for December 31st, 2021, whichever comes first.
Yeah, I was thinking December 31st, yeah.
We good? We got that addition amendment was accepted by both the mover and the second. Any other discussion?
do we need to have an effective date in there? I mean, because if not, we're gonna have those people 6 months from
Yeah.
coming back. Do we say starting
We said it'll take at least 3 weeks to get the cards.
the 20?
October 15th.
Yeah, 3 weeks, add 3 weeks.
I don't know why you couldn't start it Monday, and then if we don't have the cards, just give them like an IOU for the card or something, to where,
It'd been easier for them though if we had the
That-
card.
If we gave them the next week, that would give them, whoever's gonna put this in motion, time to contact everybody who's gonna be given the shots.
Yeah.
You know, they make it effective October 1 or October, whatever that first Monday is.
Fourth.
October 4.
October 4th.
so that's only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So I just see some people on the line, so I'm gonna wait 2 weeks till I get my card, you know, instead of go ahead and getting it now.
I see that.
So to summarize, the motion is 25 for the first shot, 50 for the second. Johnson & Johnson is 50. It will begin October 4th, run through December 31st for a maximum of $375,000.
There you go.
Is that it?
Should we say, as long as the funds last? Or
Yeah, she
she
said that.
Yeah.
She said that.
did say that?
By doing that, are we gonna stop people from getting the shot for the next 10 days?
That's what I just said.
I don't think
That's
so, but
why
a
I
lot of
said,
them not gonna hear about
should-
this.
Should we give them an IOU until the end or whatever, but, I mean, you can
You
get cards today, but depending on how many, you may pay a little more for them right now, but if you got them that quick, but between the retailers here in town, you can buy up, $25,000 gift cards pretty quick. But they may look at you funny when you do that, but
Did y'all get that done by Monday?
Like, we've already reached out to the banks and most of them, because they get, especially when you're ordering large batches, they get them from their regional, so they're looking at least a week notice before they could get them in once the order's been placed.
If I go get my shot tomorrow, if we make it effective today and I go get my shot this afternoon, can I bring that record to somebody and get a $25 card
next week,
a month from now?
that's what I'd like an IOU or
How is the news gonna get out? So many people don't buy the
They're
news.
right here.
they're right here.
They're right here. And
Facebook, you put on
and if they, and
Facebook.
if they don't.
I'm sorry,
if they-
y'all. I
the thing is,
apologize.
If they hear about it a week from now, I mean, the people are getting their shot right now. If they hear about it, they're gonna say they wish they hadn't gotten it.
Yeah.
I think we need to buy some way that if you got your shot today, we make it effective today, that they can bring that, because everybody who gets a shot gets a,
Right, get
whatever
the
the
card.
thing is, gets that card. They bring that, then you gotta figure out, you make sure they didn't, whoever they got it from didn't give them a card or something.
Right. Well, if you run this through the health department and you make it effective tomorrow morning, and then later on, they come back in come to the health department, they present their COVID card that's dated. After that, they can also, the health department can go into the COVID database and verify that you actually received the shot.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna have that many.
But yeah, they could take their verification back to where they got their shot and get them,
Okay.
get their card.
Okay, there's a month delay between first and second shot.
Mhm.
So what about somebody that got their first shot 3 weeks ago? And then gets their second shot,
Well, I think that second shot would
well,
qualify.
yeah, the second shot would qualify.
Yeah, I agree.
But see, that, while I was asking this, we cannot get the radio station, at all in, Waverly.
Oh, shit.
We can.
95.1? Oh.
I have to be halfway by Sabanero Road before I can even pick up
Just like that,
anything
you
for
play it on your
Lawrenceburg.
phone.
So what?
I play it on my phone.
I've been all up through there, I get on my car truck radio.
You
All the way
do?
out to Cypress Bend.
On the FM side.
On the FM side,
Well,
yeah.
I can't get even.
I get it all the way to I-95 if I'm going
Sometimes you go up
74.
and have
Yeah.
I can't get, I mean, I had FM, but I couldn't get it, but maybe we just in a certain area.
Should be able to get it all through there.
If I may, it sounds like there is some movement toward the effective date being tomorrow.
Yeah.
Through December 31st. Will you accept that as a,
I will accept that.
Not a problem.
not a problem? Okay.
Do I need to repeat it all?
No, I'm gonna depend on Jason.
I was gonna say, do you want me to read it back?
Yeah, you read it to us.
Okay, so, a motion for the incentive program for the vaccine, to be $25 for the first shot, $50 for the second shot, or $50 for the Johnson & Johnson, for a total expenditure of no more than $375,000, beginning September 24th, 2021, until the funds are expended, or until December 31st, 2021, whichever comes first.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The ayes have it.
Now, with that, even though the program's active, we don't have the first card yet, so don't come asking for 2 weeks.
What do we
Well,
tell them about taking their card, or where do they go with it, or when?
We'll get back out with you with that, but ultimately, we're gonna wind up probably processing most of that through the health department. And they'll be able to verify and track.
I wouldn't think you'd have a mess.
We're still gonna be looking at 400 people in between now and 3 weeks, a couple of weeks from now, so.
In addition to them doing, messaging, would you be sure we put something on Facebook?
Yes.
Social media will reach a crowd that may not listen to the radio or read the radio.
I want to ask about the SCAT program. We finished with that.
Mhm.
Have we, started the SCAT pro in Waverham?
No, ma'am, because, well, our only problem is I do not have the staff. We have advertised for part-time staff for probably 6 months. And we get applications, offer to hire, they don't come. We are really, and much like other places, we can't find staff.
He was got to go back to work.
The reason, I've really been thinking through, and Kevin and I have had some discussion, I've discussed it with my DSS board as well. We are transitioning to a fleet of SCAT buses that don't require a CDL. Right, good, right? But that could make recruiting people easier. But we need to weigh out what is our liability when we hire people that don't have a CDL to do public transportation and there's an accident. Right, you're gonna inherit some liability with that, or at least you can inherit some kickback if it happens, and we're letting, whoever drive a SCAT van. Not that we wouldn't. Of course, we would do a very thorough check into their driving record. So it's something that we're trying to think through. And is that the decision or the way we want to go as a county to begin recruiting for non-CDL drivers?
I think you're gonna have to.
Yeah, or is
Even if you
this the effect of COVID, much like everywhere else, that people are not applying for jobs?
Well, there's a shortage of bus drivers all over
Oh,
the state.
wow.
Exactly.
I mean, Wayne
At the
County,
beginning of,
I mean, they can't get
this
kids to
school
school.
year,
Truck drivers and
here,
everything.
I think
showing.
Scotland,
There's just
not
not
worth
worth
it.
Scotland told me they were down 15 bus drivers
Mhm.
here at the beginning of the year, so. But Miss Golston, back to your point, it's weighing heavily on my mind. It's a plan, a new route we passed, and it's a new route we can't start.
I understand.
But it's right there on the board of priorities.
Unless some of the commissioners want to start driving.
Well, I was suggesting the way they can park it at your house, and you just go out every morning and take off.
I heard about the school system, superintendent started driving the school bus, and she couldn't get no drivers, so, anything possible.
Can you take one seat out of a 16 passenger bus and make it a 14?
No.
You know what I'm getting
But
at?
we are in a position because we've replaced, buses. I believe we only have 2 out of 7 that require CDL.
Oh, okay.
So we're moving in the right direction. for
Just
that.
slowly.
That's exactly what we, sure.
That's what I thought. I thought you could take the seat out.
We are told whatever is, on that stamp
The fact
from that
that-
manufacturer.
JJ, before you leave, would
Just
you all
walk
make,
out.
would you all make sure, because I've already unbelievably got 2 text messages asking if you've already been vaccinated, are you eligible to receive the incentive? So let's make sure that that's clear, that it is not for those who've already been vaccinated.
I'll make sure I put that in there. And Robert, I'll give it to you on the next part that you're gonna talk about.
Okay.
Here you go.
Not to cut that off.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I know.
I'm glad people are watching the meeting.
Yeah, me too, I'm surprised.
That's all I had for the recovery funds. We're still reaching out. We're still, like I said, I've got a conference call this afternoon about it. I've got a county manager's call this afternoon about it, so I'm sure it'll come back up. And part of it is what can we do with these funds?
When you have your call with the managers, do y'all get a chance for folks to say, this is what we're doing that may be different?
That question is always put out there, and the association is working on trying to develop, okay, here are some programs that other places are doing.
Because there's got to be some innovative ways to spend this money in a positive way.
So,
Anybody else?
Yeah, this goes back to the ARP funds. That's why I asked that question earlier. If we were
Goes
in
back to the what, Tim?
the ARP funds. There was a comment made, whoever did it, I think it was the city attorney, made the comment in their meeting about the IHA project, and that he didn't think it was a good legal decision for them to tie with us about a possible I&J project because we're using ARP funds.
No.
Yeah, that's what I just wanted to make sure that the public, that wasn't never our plans, was to use as ARP funds. And so, but that was,
That is
he
what
said
we
that
said.
in the meeting.
Where did he get that from?
I don't know. I don't know.
But you heard it said that that's
Yeah,
what.
he said it. Well, it was in the meeting. It said that. I think the newspaper story said it, but, that's never been, that's the first I've heard about it. So.
Me too, I mean, yeah.
The other thing is do we know now with a running total, how much have we got ARP funds undesignated? Is the, I guess.
Yeah, and as of today, how much has been designated?
Right, after today's
After
stuff,
today.
how much is undesignated ARP funds? And then I'll get to my next.
Of the amount that we have received,
Yeah, yeah.
we're about 2.8 million that's not been formally designated.
2.8 million?
How much did we get?
3.7.
3.7.
But that was.
The first time.
Yeah.
And we'll get another 3.7 next year.
But are some of those funds, I'm not sure I want to handle this way. So what'd you say we had a 2.8?
Yeah.
So
Now, that doesn't include the amount that I said will probably go to water and sewer, because
Yeah,
that would take it down to,
1.8.
Are any of these funds used for some of the salaries for the law enforcement?
okay, that's right. I forgot about those. So that's, if we do that over the next 3 years, that'll take it down to about 2.3.
That's right.
2.3.
2.3, less the possible water of 800 to a million, so we still at 1.5 million.
Yeah.
Of the first batch of money.
Right.
Well, I just
What
wanted
about
to,
broadband? We use some of that deal.
We've kind of earmarked it, but we don't have a project to go with it yet.
I mean, we're not gonna start selling broadband, so.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what else you do on that. I mean,
I don't either, I don't know how they're gonna do
We're
that.
not-
Council
we're
government
not
has a plan, right?
you know,
They're working on a study for it, trying to figure out ways of doing improvement.
the only way to do that is get somebody to run it.
Yeah.
And we're not getting into broadband business.
No, I thought that COG had a specific program that.
No, not yet. But
They can't do
Go-
no people.
go ahead,
And this is not gonna be a decision for today. You can start thinking about it. My thought process was using that, I think it's 13 acres behind IEJ, is that what we had? And maybe start looking at a low income assistant housing, individual housing. Maybe you start at 5 houses or 10 houses. Because I think you can use this money for that, right?
And that's one of the things I know, I think you started the conversation, and Mark has had this with Habitat for Humanity,
Right,
to look out, because I think they have something similar up in Wake County, I think.
right.
So looking at that possibility of going into there.
But I mean, if you put $80,000 to $90,000 into a single family home and then you make it income driven as to qualify for a 0% or whatever the number may be
Yeah.
of,
I think the partnership with Habitat's one way to go with that.
I wouldn't want to take it by ourselves. I
Right,
definitely want somebody else to.
There is definitely need for
But
housing.
do you think this is something that is allowable through the rescue plan fund?
It's something that we're exploring, trying to figure out.
Yeah, I'm not saying make a motion today for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Well, I was gonna say that I was talking with, not talking, I was on a Zoom with county commissioners for a meeting, and they were talking about that. And Hope County actually shared that they are investing a portion of their funds into something to this effect.
Sure.
And the other thing they're doing that I thought was interesting, I shared with Ms. Coulson when I talked with her the other day, is, oh man, a homeless shelter.
Oh, yeah.
Hope County's gonna
We
also be
need
doing a
to
homeless
address that
shelter
subject to some degree.
with some of their funds. And those are the two things I was gonna mention, something with low income housing, and something for our homeless population, because it is a growing population. I was over by Food Line last night and saw there was some people sleeping in the woods in a tent over there.
Food Line North.
As much rain as they had.
We've had that report before. I don't know if it's the same people or not, but apparently that location does attract. And I saw yesterday there at the entrance to Walmart, the second entrance going this way, there was a young woman with a stroller that was asking for a donation for the sign, yeah.
So those are just two of the things I was thinking, something low income housing and homeless shelter of some sort. Because right now, we just don't really have anything. You gotta consider staffing and all. We don't-
Well, the only reason I picked out that area behind, because we own that land,
Mhm.
we wouldn't have to buy the
Oh,
land.
perfect.
There may be other places that, you can split it up. I would, that's just a good
Since
spot.
those last floods, it's been a desperate need for housing, because I have only one Section 8 house. Somebody call me every day wanting to rent. Do I have anything to rent? I mean, it's so bad. So I hope that we can use.
What parcel of land are you referring to, Tim?
The land behind AJ,
Yeah.
that
About
Was
10 acres?
10 acres, 13 acres or something.
Yeah.
I was just thinking of that because we're already on the land. But I mean, you could do it, maybe you decide to do 5 there, 5 in Wagram or 2 in Laurel Hill, something. I mean, you could break it up that way. But
And also, that's a good community development because you're talking about housing growth, things like that in the area. And that was one of the things you wanted to do with Johnson, so expanding those services out would be a benefit.
And I think if there's probably, these funds could be used for that, but if these funds can't be used for that, there's other funds
you could
that
get.
you can
funds.
apply
There,
for.
there are
I
housing
think it's a
programs.
viable project, whether it comes out of this money or not.
Yes.
So let's pursue that.
But I'd like to see it individual family homes, not a
Right.
complex.
We
It's
never
something that
had,
they own.
we never had Habitat to come speak to us, have we? We never had any did we have some representative from Habitat to come?
It's been a long time if we have. I had emailed the director last year, I think, inviting him to, get in touch with me and I never had any.
Yeah, I
response
remember
back.
that now, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who would direct and drive this thing. That's the answer to that. I don't think it should be us, but there's a lot involved in that.
But so
Just an
many-
idea to be thinking about. I ain't thinking that much.
Okay, any other ideas about these funds?
Can't get a scat driver with them,
I don't think the money's the problem. It sounds like just giving to people.
Well, and that's, and like y'all said, everybody's got that problem right now, unfortunately. Okay, Kevin, what's next?
The next thing is a program that the hospital and EMS have been talking about. And this is a program the hospital is actually driving, but EMS would be is an integral part with it. Just with the admission to home. And Robert can talk about this better than I can, so.
Yes, so we were approached by the hospital a couple months back. Part of the Atrium, Scott Memorial Hospital is part of the Atrium umbrella, if you will. And this is a common practice in the Atrium world to where they're wanting to start up a program to where they admit patients to home. So if it's someone that comes to the emergency room and they see the need that the patient needs to be admitted, but yet does not necessarily need to tie up an admission bed inside the hospital, then they would just admit the patient home under care. They were still going to be a patient of the hospital. So in order for the hospital to do this, they initially were looking at hiring nurses, but they were also looking at hiring paramedics. To help with this project. So I caught wind of this, and so I started kind of making some phone calls and asking questions because I did have some concerns from an EMS standpoint. If the hospital goes out, they start hiring their own paramedics. So I was trying to be proactive here on this, and sure enough, what I was able to gather is Scotland Memorial Hospital is wanting to adopt that same project here locally. So what they will do is the patient coming into the emergency room, if they see a need that the patient needs to be admitted, for continuation of care, then if they meet the criteria, they will admit that patient home. And then that patient would have visits, 2 or 3 times a day. I mean, at least twice a day for 2 or 3 days, just as if they were in the hospital. Just because of the way our society works, there's a paramedic shortage, there's a nursing shortage, okay, right now. So hospital was thinking outside the box. So when I reached out to them, I said, hey, I understand your project. I see a need for your project. My concern is if you go out on your own and start hiring paramedics. I don't know that that I'll be able to compete with that. So we were able to have some good open dialogue, and we've got the hospital on board with contracting with us, that we would provide the paramedics for them. This is it gives us a voice in this program. I'm not having to compete with the hospital now for paramedics. And it allows our paramedics to be able to go out and do something that's just a little bit different than the day-to-day operations of running an ambulance. A good portion of my staff work part-time jobs. So this would be an opportunity for them to be able to do something that's totally different, even though you're still taking care of people, but you're not on an ambulance, in and out of the elements. The hospital very quickly jumped on board with that. So I was very excited about that today, that they're willing to form that partnership with us. The way, and this is an ongoing conversation, we're having weekly meetings. The contract is still an ongoing contract, so nothing's been finalized yet. But the way it's going to work is we are in the process of negotiating that we will contract the hospital. They will provide the training for the medics interested that's interested in wanting to do this. They will provide the computers that these medics would use. And they will also provide the salary. They will also pay for the salaries.
What about insurance and liability?
That's part of the okay, you got some liability, we'll take some liability. Because even though we are contracting with the hospital, they are still employees of the county.
Right.
So we would absorb all that liability, correct, Kevin?
Yeah, we would have liability as well as the hospital.
Yes. So both agencies have liability here.
Do you have a way of getting more paramedics?
Well, I mean, we're constantly always advertising, for part-time employees. It's just like everywhere else in the school system. I mean, they start out with low numbers, they produce low numbers. And then you got the same amount of agencies competing for those lower numbers of certified paramedics. And of course, COVID, believe it or not, COVID has hurt the medical profession all the way around. Colleges aren't producing nurses like they once were. Colleges aren't producing paramedics like they once were. And it's all because of COVID.
Also, with this program, this is something they can finish their shift, get rest, and then on their day off, they can do this. Even though it's with EMS, it's still a part-time job for them. So they don't need to go to work at Lowe's.
They're gonna get paid through the hospital.
The hospital will pay us and then we'll pay them.
They are totally an employee of Scotland County.
Correct. We're just contracting that service.
And I know you're using the term paramedic in this, but are we even hiring EMTIs?
We are.
Or
Yes, we are. Yes.
okay.
We advertise for all 3 levels. EMT, well, now they're advanced EMTs now, and then paramedics. Yes.
Okay, I know. But under this, using the term paramedic, are you talking about any of those?
No,
Could do it, or is it just
they have to be a paramedic for their, and the reason why they have to be a paramedic is because of the level of care that's got to be
I
provided.
figured that, but I just, anyway, that was just a general question I had
Yes.
anyway.
How many vacancies do you have?
Full-time vacancies, we are fully staffed from a full-time standpoint. Now, I do have some that are out, maternity leave, for health reasons and whatnot. But as far as any full-time vacancies, we are fully staffed at this point.
That's good. That's good.
And that's a rare occurrence.
I was going to say.
Yes,
That's,
our neighbors to the east, they're in desperate need of full-time employees. When it comes to the EMS service there, they are in desperate need.
Is a paramedic the highest level of training?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. And we're not the only ones that the hospital's gonna contract with. They're interested in contracting with us. They're interested in contracting with home health agencies in our community, as well as outside, because their parameter for this project is a 30-mile radius of Scott Memorial Hospital, excluding South Carolina.
Yeah, and that was kind of be my question. If they send somebody comes from Robinson County and they send them home to Robinson County, are you still gonna be providing that?
We could, it could be one of our medics, or it could be one of, I think Pembroke Rescue is interested in getting on board with this, so it could be one of their paramedics providing that service.
And let's say it's a Bennettsville resident,
That does not apply.
they're not applying.
Yeah, South Carolina is not a part of the 30-mile radius.
Okay.
Robert, is COVID driving all this?
I want to say it has a big part, is a big factor in this because of the timing
Yeah.
that this is all coming about. So I think COVID is playing a part in this, but it's not an uncommon practice now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is not an uncommon practice.
So it was in place before COVID?
It was, it's just escalated now.
Okay.
Because of the simple fact, they just don't have the availability of beds right now. So the healthcare systems are really thinking outside the box. What can we do? And this is one of the projects that they're driving right now.
And this is very similar. A number of places, even before COVID, had started a community paramedic program where you had somebody, they were discharged, but they were still going through follow-up, wound care, things like that. And paramedics would go, and it was kind of like a home health service. They would go in, they would check on people as just part of a follow-up.
Give you an example of what condition they would admit to home.
It would be someone who may, they may go in and be diagnosed with a diagnosis of septic, that they're septic in some way, but they can admit them home to receive their antibiotics.
Right.
Or they have someone that goes into the emergency room and they've got an ulcer. Okay, they need to be admitted, but they don't necessarily need to be admitted at the hospital. They can admit him home and do the wound care there. So those are the type of things that they're looking at wanting to. Those are some of the criteria that would meet this project. If there's someone in severe respiratory distress or anything like that, then obviously they have to stay in the hospital.
Right.
But those are just kind of some examples.
Home healthcare will play a big role in this thing.
And they're actually part of this as well. Yes, they're doing this from a combination of home health agencies as well as paramedics. So the home health agencies, the nurses would actually be the ones responsible for doing the admissions, to admit them to home. And then the paramedics would do the routine visits and provide most of the care. And then your nurses there as a backup, and then they would also take care of all the discharging.
It beats building bigger hospitals, doesn't it?
Nice. So we're not in this alone. They're partnering with multiple different agencies. We're just one piece of that, to try to make our healthcare system in our community is the best we possibly can.
And so the hospital may be using some of their COVID funds to pay for this project.
I'm sure they probably are. I haven't been told that, Mr. Chairman, but I feel certain that that's probably the case as well. Yes.
It makes sense, because
Yes.
they can certainly justify
Absolutely.
because of the
And
hospital.
if we got a medic that goes like that, that's going to be working on that particular day, we provide the equipment that medic will need so that they can do their assessments on the patients, blood pressures, and things like that. If they have to do active checks, we will provide the equipment. We'll provide the transportation for them.
Okay, when you say you provide transportation, how is that?
We've got one of the scat vans that was taken out of service. April, was that last year? Last year, we assumed that van, so we have it, but it's still a county asset, and that's what we would use for them to actually.
So you're not taking one of your ambulances?
No, sir, not unless we absolutely had to. I'm not going to take that off the table, but we would have the van that we could utilize as a primary vehicle.
So so are you looking for an approval from us or do we?
No,
need to do
I think
that?
at this point it's just more for informational
Just
purposes to
an
let you
FYI.
know, here's what's going on. Because there's no contract that's been signed, nothing's been finalized. We're still in the negotiation phases. But it's just to make you aware, situation awareness of what's going on.
Well, I think it's important we be made aware of it because you're still occupying a limited number of people.
Correct.
You've already added 2 guys, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right. And there again, it's going to be one of those situations to where, they ask for availability. And if this week I don't have anybody, because obviously my priority is making sure that our ambulances are staffed. So if we don't have anybody available this week, then they just move on to the next person.
And this is a little bit off the subject, but you said occasionally, and I know this is true, that you get called to go because you don't have an ambulance available.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you go, what do you take with you that allows you to treat whatever
If I'm at the office, I take an ambulance.
you grab one of those other 3?
That's correct. Now, my assistant has a QRV that's equipped. He has a monitor. He has a jump bag with equipment, medication, and whatnot. So he can respond in his QRV just like I used to do.
Okay.
But if I have to respond and I'm at the office or close by, then I'll go grab an ambulance and respond. And I'm basically I'm responding just like just like Matt would.
Yeah.
And I start rendering care to an ambulance till the ambulance gets to the transport.
How often do you have to do that?
Me, not too often. I mean,
And your
it's not. I'm not having to do it that often now. I'll take it. But now Matt, with him with his QRV, he does respond. He responds out there with us. So he responds a lot more than I do.
Does he respond 5 times a week or?
I'd say at least 2 to 3 times a week. That he's responding, and he may not necessarily be responding as the primary responding unit, but he's responding out there to assist as needed.
Thank you.
So they were both on trucks Tuesday.
Yeah, most of them had to run trucks.
Staff
Yeah.
shortage.
I'm assuming Mr. Johnson will look through that contract.
Okay. Any other questions of Mr. Sampson? Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all.
I think being proactive may have been a very good strategy on this one. Any other item?
That's all I have.
Any comments from commissioners? Commissioner Goldston? Commissioner Ivey?
I made that comment earlier, which could have been done about that, making sure that the city knew that that's not where we were taking those funds, which I still can't figure out where that came from. The other question, or maybe it's a logistical thing that I would say, when we get back into the 911 building with our regular meeting, can we start using the new system on the YouTube broadcast? Because they can't hear. The problem is, and I think that's why we spent all that money not to use it for a phone call system, and you still can't hear it. If you dial in on the phone call, right, which is what that new system's being used for, they just switch it and use it for what we bought it for instead of the phone call part. And then I just think that would be easier. That's why we bought the thing. So and we haven't used it for that yet. And
Is there any problem with that happening?
The only issue is, and I don't know how much of an issue this is, but would be if we have anybody participating remotely.
I don't even know that we should be doing that now, but
Yeah. But last month we did, none of the commissioners were remote, and we didn't have anybody then. We don't have anybody scheduled for October to present remotely.
yeah, I don't even know that we need to be doing it remotely, but that's a different topic. There is one other thing, and I just got a text about this. County employee policy ran out June 30th of 21 that stated you could get quarantined and get paid.
Mhm.
Some are not getting tested because even with symptoms, because they can't afford not to be in work right now. And they might have COVID, but they won't get tested because they know they'll be sent home quarantine, not paid. Is that right? Is that?
The emergency COVID sick leave
ended June 30th, yes.
So they would have to have sick time or whatever built up to take quarantine. I think we need to extend that. I'm sorry, but I mean, if we're gonna make them, I don't know.
Well, why did it end June?
Huh?
I am shaking my head.
I know, I'm curious. I want to know why. I mean,
Are you,
That was,
can I speak our experience at DSS?
yeah, well, it went off and it was originally put out and then it was extended on federal guidelines through June 30th.
It was all federal. I don't think the state had anything.
but I mean, if we're making an employee go home, not because they say they're sick, but they tested positive. And we're making them take the time
Quarantine.
to quarantine, I think we should be covering that. I mean, that's my opinion, but
Or sometimes in the past, I think, I don't know about county employees, but other places, people have been sent home because they've been in contact with somebody who was positive, not because they've been tested positive.
That's true too.
So I hope that if we did that, it would be the ones that are test positive
tested positive.
and not contact, because that can be a whole lot of
Yeah,
people. I
that could
can
be
say I
too
was contacted today,
Right,
it'd be
right.
everybody in here.
But
I
you
would-
also have the case of those who don't get rapid testing. If I go get tested today, it may take some time to get results. And I still got to be home until those, because it doesn't make sense for me to go get tested.
How long does it take the health department to do that test?
Well, a couple of things. If you've been vaccinated and you just have a potential exposure and you're not symptomatic, you don't need to be quarantined. If you go off and you're not vaccinated, there is a short quarantine, and then after 5 days, you need to be tested. The rapid tests that we have available at the health department, those results are available same day.
So they're doing rapid at the American Legion?
They're doing rapid and PCR, or they are doing rapid testing there.
I thought they were not.
So most of what you're getting there is you're getting it back I think they're doing it, you can get those results back the same day.
Well, I'm like Ms. Golston. I don't, if we're making them go home because of a positive test, then that should be outside of their sick time and that kind of thing, but not just because of exposure, because then you can have everybody, I went by my third cousins and got,
I'd have to send my whole staff home.
right. Well, yeah, because they've been exposed every day.
We're exposed
They
daily.
will use that. They will use that.
Oh, I know, they'll abuse that, but that's my fault. So, but if we need to change I didn't know that had run out.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to, I think, if we can, because if not, COVID's not gonna get a whole lot better. If I'm at work, perhaps symptomatic, but I'm not gonna get tested because that's reasonable. I mean.
I don't have the sick time if I get
So I'll just stay at
quarantined
work.
for 14 days. And so I just stay at work and
Can we hear from April?
Sure.
don't you think a testing
So-
requirement would be,
I
You got-
I can give you the experience at DSS. We have 115 staff. So every day, there's a conversation about COVID. I've been exposed, my children have to be quarantined, so I have to stay home with them, or I'm not feeling well, I need to go get tested. Or we are training our supervisors, if you see somebody that appears to be sick, we do need to send them home to be tested, because we're not gonna let them choose to stay, and
Right.
possibly not know what's going on. So, what we are doing is, if someone says, my children need to quarantine, and for whatever reason, people need to be out, we're following county guidance like Kevin's describing, basic vaccination versus not. Our personnel department is making the decision, not our supervisors, managers, so we can be consistent. And if they need to go, they go. They provide us documentation either of their testing or of the quarantine requirement. It might be from the daycare or from the school. Whatever you got, let us know. And then once they do that, we will work with them so they can work from home. And because I'm like you all, I don't want them to eat up all their time. And many not get paid because they don't have it. So we work with them to work from home because they can. We have the.
Well, yeah, but you have that ability. Robert people can't work from home. I mean, that's
Right.
impossible. You know, so is Susan on? I saw her on earlier too. Is
Yeah, she's,
something that we need to,
and that's something, if you want, we can go off and we can come up with something and get the policy committee together and come up with some modified guidance.
yeah, I'd like to see it.
I appreciate your thoughts of you need to be sick.
Well, it ain't my fault because somebody texted.
Right.
I know nothing
But
about it.
I appreciate the recognition of you need to be sick to do this.
Oh, it's gonna be
versus
abused.
letting
yeah.
it-
Just don't
There
want
she
to
goes.
work.
She heard
because
me
it
call.
did.
I heard.
The last time,
There she
they
is.
knew they had 80 hours.
They use them.
They got it.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, they use 82 of them. What's your thought on that, how to structure that?
I have researched that on our human resources listserv. And a lot of the policies that I've seen will extend COVID leave for vaccinated employees. And I think that is to try to, now I haven't seen those, I really haven't dug into the weeds of the policies that I've seen, but I've just noticed that of course, if they are having symptoms or whatever, they would extend that to vaccinated employees. And I was assuming that's to encourage people to be vaccinated. But for issues like quarantine for children, that we've seen a host of those situations in our public school system since school started, I can research the policies and see what others are doing in that regard.
I mean, for the ones that's not available to work from home, and there's some of that, but there's also departments that don't have that ability.
The majority of departments
Yeah.
would not have that
Yeah,
ability.
but I mean, if the employee tests positive and has to stay home, then I don't think we should be eating into his regular sick time. I think vaccinated or unvaccinated, I don't think matters. Because some people aren't going to get vaccinated with the county. I know there's female employees that have complained about don't want to get vaccinated because they may get pregnant. They don't want to have, So, but somehow to structure that thing, but it has to be something that not abusable proof, but because there's nothing for that, but that we're not limiting them because we're forcing them. They're sick, they feel like they got it, but they don't want to get tested because if they're tested, then they got to go home for 14 days and they don't have a sick time. I don't think we should penalize them for that. And because.
Now, we could, you all as a board could extend the COVID leave and we could just tweak it to however you all choose, but we had extended it. We took the family medical leave out that helped. That's when all the daycares and schools were closed. So we took that out and just went for the emergency paid sick leave, and we just changed the name of it to COVID paid sick leave. So you all as a board could just extend that to however long you think you could, or we can look at it to tweak it.
But you would have, but that requires a positive test? Or
It
is
would
that just-
require what you all wanted it to require.
Right, we would.
I mean, what does it require before? Was it just symptoms or?
Well, if they were
exposure?
told to quarantine, and that would have to be by a healthcare provider. If they were having symptoms, they were told to isolate, they were encouraged to get tested. Of course, they would be able to use COVID sick leave. And sometimes we get the documentation on the back end, but we did require documentation for that.
I think what you're suggesting is that what we should require is the positive test.
You gotta have positive, and if the health department has the ability to do a
Mhm.
rapid test, they leave here and go straight there and get it done that moment, and then by the next day, you'll know.
Yeah, because the health department just got the rapid tests very recently.
Is the rapid test at one time, it wasn't considered as reliable as the longer test.
Right.
They're both over 90% effective, especially for determining positivity.
That's better than the rapid test used to be.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, because the ones I had to do coming back were rapid tests. I mean, they were 15 minutes. And and I asked that question, it was like 97% for the positive part.
Yes.
Yeah.
But don't you have to have a follow-up rapid test within 36 hours?
No.
No? Okay.
There are a number of things that kind of go against that is easy to get confused on. If someone's going to be released from the hospital going back to a nursing home, most of the time the nursing home requires multiple tests before they're going to accept it. And one of those, and probably at least one of those is going to have to be a PCR test, which is the blood draw. So, so you're talking about the follow-ups. There are medical facilities that require it before they'll admit someone.
That's really not what we're talking about.
That's not what we're talking about.
Go ahead, Susan. Yes.
Well, I think to move this along more quickly, rather than setting up a policy committee meeting, that then they have to bring it to the board. There's 5 of us here. What
Well,
do
we
you
can
think?
just do what she said, extend that
Right,
policy
we
that's
can
already
just
there.
authorize an extension of what is already in place and tweak it to the parameters that we
To
want.
have an active positive test.
Well, that's what I have a question on, because right now I have, or we've had recently, a person who was out for almost a month, due to COVID. We've got a mom out now because her child was quarantined and everybody in her household has to quarantine. So she's been out for about 2 weeks and she has no leave. She's in leave without pay at this point. And we've been reaching out to do the volunteer shared leave policy to see
But
if
she's
people.
not positive, right?
No, she's just quarantining. So what would you do in those circumstances when through no fault of their own, their child is sent home?
And
That's a tough question.
That is a
Actually,
tough question.
Which the extent, the previous COVID sick leave policy would cover that.
And the previous one
But
did or
then we
did
get
not.
into the abuse part.
Yes, we
Because-
deal with the children
Right.
sent home, that becomes
Right.
complicated.
I think.
But
my
you can
child-
get documentation for that. We can require documentation for that.
I don't think you need documentation for any of it.
Any of the leave we do. Mhm.
But has it been abused any, do you think, Susan?
yes,
Yes, naturally.
any policy you create.
Yeah, they're gonna.
I know that,
It's
but I
gonna be
mean.
abused, but that.
April, I heard
Let's drill it
you over
down to
there.
this. I mean, yeah,
I
every
was-
policy has the
Hang on just
potential
one
to be abused, but you know.
I just hate for a few bad apples to make it
I know,
harmful to everybody else.
I know.
April.
I was thinking through Susan's scenario, and we're experiencing that now. Have someone, you get a lot of the daycare saying your child can't come back.
Mhm.
The employee's child is not sick. They just can't go to daycare.
Right.
Well, that employee can come to work if somebody else is watching their child. They aren't being told, like, how many levels of quarantine are you gonna go, right? Your child is not sick, you're not sick. You don't have to
The
quarantine.
daycare just closed for quarantine.
Right, so,
You just need to find alternate childcare if you can.
If you can, that's
And
the
if
problem.
Yeah, but sometimes you
right,
can.
Yeah, but if
well,
but if you-
there's, how hard do you try?
But if you don't have relatives, you know.
I know. I just,
I know.
it's gonna be abused to some extent.
With kids in school now, and they shutting down the school, it's a tough time.
So,
I think that the original issue was the person who is sick and potentially coming to work and spreading it to other people that isn't going to get tested because they can't afford it.
Can't afford to be out of work.
Can we tweak it to deal with that scenario?
You're never gonna get the abuse out of it, no matter what you do.
yeah, you're not gonna make everybody happy.
Right. But,
And there's always gonna be somebody to abuse it.
right,
But we need to put something in place to protect those who need it.
right, I agree. I don't think we should penalize somebody that's active COVID against their regular leave, that works for the county. I think they should be covered.
So you want the policy to read for active COVID?
Well, but then you got these ones that have the kids. I
Because
mean,
I'm thinking we can make it, I think it was, I can't remember, I didn't have the policy, I didn't have time to bring it up before I came in here, but you can require your employees to work from home. if they're able to do so in a quarantine process.
Right. No, I
And they would not be issued leave if they've been offered work at home.
at home.
They would not be able to take COVID paid sick leave.
Right, right.
Susan, what about the way when we had that policy was active
Mhm.
as it pertains to not only if you were positive or your child was positive, but if you were having to take care of someone who was positive, even though the employee's not positive, but they're having to take care of a child.
Let me just go pull up the policy real quick and I'll bring it right back if you can give me.
But then it comes to the question who's vaccinated and not vaccinated. If you decide you're not gonna get vaccinated, does the county have a policy requirement for vaccination?
I don't think, I'm leaving it due, but y'all.
I don't think you can put the vaccination and unvaccinated into formula because
I don't think
some people
that's
can't,
scary.
some people just can't have it. And
And I don't wanna get into
I don't want
having
to
to
be making
justify
their,
why they're not getting.
right, I don't want to make their decisions
I'm
for
not
them,
making that judgment
but,
call.
you know,
Well, if we make it so broad that we cover everybody that can possibly be quarantined, what we do is we invite the county to become the caretaker for all of those,
for all of them.
all of those
And
families.
I don't want to do that.
I don't think we should do that,
Oh,
one.
yeah.
I think doing what was originally proposed, we should do, not just because it it protects that person from having to, because they don't have any sick leave, or they don't want to use a sick leave, they're not, so they're gonna come to work, and we got somebody coming to work who may test positive, go get tested, we're just adding to the problem. So I think we need to go ahead and either make that recommendation today and get it in place, or to ask Susan to come back to us at the meeting 10 days from now.
Now, one thing that can be done, and this came from finance, but, and this would be a fairly broad-reaching scenario, is you can go off and just give everybody 40 hours of sick leave. Or everybody who's not already been withheld in a certain amount of time, but,
Well, do we require, if they use sick time now, do they have to bring a doctor's note? Because you could, I mean, that's just another sign for abuse.
it depends on how long they're out. If they're out for 3 days or more, they need a doctor's note.
Yeah, that's how, I'm trying to remember.
I just don't want somebody coming to work that think they have it and don't want to get tested,
Oh, I agree.
so, because they don't have sick time.
I agree with that.
I agree with that, and I can see that would be a real problem.
But then where do we get that happy medium? I guess we'll see what she has. There she comes.
And I think it would probably be
I'm
fairly,
sorry I extended the meeting, but I just,
It wasn't just the.
that came up while we were sitting here. So.
Well, it's a good point, because COVID's gonna be with us for a while.
Okay, Susan, what do you have?
Okay, COVID paid sick leave, all employees will be eligible for COVID paid sick leave for reasons 1 through 4. COVID paid sick leave at full pay will be available for an employee who is unable to work remotely because the employee is subject to federal, state, or local quarantine or isolation order. The employee has been advised by a healthcare provider to self-quarantine because they were infected with or been exposed to or are at high risk of COVID-19. The employee is experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and is seeking a medical diagnosis. And number 4 is what, Robert, you were asking. The employee is caring for a spouse, child, or parent subject or advised to quarantine or isolation for COVID-related reasons. It's just those 4.
That's very broad. I mean, that made us the caretakers of the county.
That's too broad.
That's too broad.
Um,
We gotta trim it down. And
Well, maybe, Susan, and whatever staff they heard what we said, what we want. And maybe at the next meeting, we can come up with a policy, something that will
I don't think.
address that's what was specific thing that we want done.
it would be fairly.
I would say as abuse proof as you can come within that policy. Oh, that's my voice. I say somebody's talking. That within that parameter, and maybe removing one of the 4 steps to come back, and we'll have it at our regular meeting. And then we can make it retroactive, right? I mean, that's not an
Right.
issue.
Susan, if somebody came in today and said, I was tested positive, here's my result, I've got to go home.
Mhm.
And they didn't have sick leave, we would not pay them. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct. We would be trying to get the forms done for voluntary shared leave if possible, to get leave donated to that person, but leave is on a voluntary basis. They may not receive
We
any
get
leave.
those.
Well, what about annual leave?
Yeah, they would have to take their own leave. Yeah,
Whether
sick
it's
leave or annual leave.
annual, right, I think we need to
Right.
say that, so that, because you could be sitting there with 20 days of annual leave but no sick leave. No, if you have leave in the bank, period, you gotta take it.
That's gotta come first. I understand.
Yeah.
My thing is somebody's sitting down there in an office right now sick, don't wanna go get tested because I don't have any time left this year.
Right.
So you want this available to those who do not have leave? Is that what I'm hearing?
That-
Yes.
That's what I would,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got 4 vacation days left in their quarantine for 10 days.
So they would have to have
They would
exhausted
exhaust those
all
4
approved
and then
paid
they're.
leave.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Uh-oh.
From what I already hear this in my mind. How is it fair that I was a good steward of my time,
Mm-hmm.
so I had to take my own leave?
I was just
But this
about to
guy
say,
wasn't, and you're gonna let them be at home.
Right.
Hey,
I was just-
We can't work out everything.
We have earners and burners.
we do.
We can't work out every detail with it.
That's a huge employee morale issue. That's
It is.
Yeah, and it is.
You were thinking like I was.
Yeah, I was thinking,
Yeah.
this time should not have
Because
fit.
you could have somebody that's only been on the job 6 months, they haven't accrued a lot of leave time. So they can't help it if they don't have it, because they hadn't been there that long.
But they're great.
If
So
you're
maybe we just leave that kicker out of it then, of the personal time. You gotta use your personal time first. I
Yeah,
guess.
just make the time available.
And make it available,
Yeah,
right?
just make it, and don't bother this stuff. Just no bother this.
But you're not going to work it all out.
But it don't need to be that broad. That's too broad. I think we need to have more enforceable of somebody that's actually.
So you want just number 3, the employees experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 and seeking a diagnosis.
Yeah, we have been tested
Yeah.
positive.
And tested
Tested
positive.
positive.
That's the key word,
And
tested
what
positive.
we're saying that anybody who that applies to, they are eligible for time without taking any of their own leave.
Right.
Now, with it, if you don't feel well, you're sick, you have the flu, but you just have those type of symptoms, we can send you to the health department to get tested, and you don't even clock out at that point in time. They sit you back somewhere, they sit you in your car for the 30 minutes until the results come back.
And if
You know, so we can get the results that day.
Yeah, I mean, I think if somebody's wanting to go home under this, they gotta go test. They got to go straight there to the tent or to the health department and test. Or to the hospital, whoever they wanna do it with.
And that's, I mean, all county employees, whether it's sheriff's department or finance
Or
or
whoever,
anywhere.
yeah.
So nothing for quarantine children or?
I don't think we're gonna be able to put that in there
Okay.
and not be.
Just employee must have tested positive.
I get called, my phone rings 3 times a week about there's exposure at the school, so.
Well, yeah.
Every day at 4 o'clock. At 4 o'clock.
You can't deal with that one.
Every day at
Every day
4
at 4 o'clock. Here we go.
Have they had to, quarantine classes? I mean, there's not a lot of information out there about what's going on in the schools as far as COVID. I had no idea.
Well, I had
I
those
know it
children
was
from,
at the high school.
well, I had
From
those,
our experience, from all the different schools, it's on a case-by-case basis.
Right.
There's no
I had those,
consistency.
you know, the foster kids that got involved. So I had those for a couple of weeks. And I got a note from the school one day that said that one of them was exposed. No, there was an active case in their classroom, but he wasn't within the distance of, so we don't think he needs to be quarantined. Well, why send me that note? I mean, just don't send that. But then the daycare across the street from EMS was closed. That's where he went to because of a thing. So they were closed for a week. So,
And then the private schools are totally different.
private schools are totally different.
It's crazy in the private.
We'll never take care of all
There's no
these situations.
consistency anywhere.
Okay, are we waiting for Susan to come back with something at our October 4th meeting?
Or should we
Yeah.
adopt it
Or
now?
can we adopt it now?
Well, let's let her come
You
back
can-
and see how.
If
you
she
think
comes
that
back in
that's-
October, you can make it effective
Mhm.
the 16th of last month. So
We
it
can
would be in this
back to
payroll
whenever,
period.
right, to June 30th. when it comes.
Well, you wouldn't want to go back previous pay periods,
Then we're gonna have to make all kinds of payroll adjustments.
but you can make it effective this payroll
We
period.
probably don't have a lot qualifying to fall under that anyway, right? Not that far back.
I'm thinking,
Everybody. ain't gonna be
probably the
happy no
worst
matter
one
how we
would be
do
the
it.
fairly new employee that was out about a month.
I mean, I would say tweak it the way you need to get it tweaked by our next meeting, and then we
Okay.
vote on it then, and make it retroactive back to the middle of September or something.
If she's sick for a month.
Okay. You got anything else?
I know, I didn't know that.
No
was
comment.
interesting.
Commissioner McCall? You have any comment? The chair has nothing else. Anything else?
I have nothing else.
First, to all of you, including you, Ms. Callen, thank you for being here. Robert, you and April always do a good job. Appreciate your good work. Hearing nothing else, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner B.J. Gibson and a second by Commissioner Ivy. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, say nay. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
And you still wanted to go by Johnson?
I did.
I can't go back, I can't walk.
Let's do
I cannot walk that much, I can't go.
Can we go
Monday?
nowhere?
No, when is our meeting?
Yeah, the Tuesday, your meeting on Tuesday.
That's 2 o'clock.
I think he's got a file.
12 o'clock transportation advisory. So, but whenever, I'm doing Monday morning, so we can do it.
I can do it before two.
Transportation is at noon, just for motor anyway.
Whatever, I want to do it before we do it Monday morning. Can we do Monday morning?
Good to see you.
Nine,
I
eight,
am.
nine,
I am.
nine.
Well, this-
Whatever.
Honest to God, I had the effort, but I could not, ready.
Jason, can I borrow this today?
Absolutely. So what time we doing? Monday morning.
Thank you.
I just said no.
Thank you.
And I was just saying the same thing. I
Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yep, hang in there.
Oh, yeah.
Down there every day.
Monday morning, 8:30.
I'll try to, I'll try to call it.
Yeah.
I know.
Sometimes you just can't.
Monday, 8:30.
We're gonna meet at IEJ, right?
What?
At IEJ.
Matthew Locklear.
What was he gonna get,
That issue I talked to you about last time I saw you.
Yes.
But he was calling my part-time, that's the only, but he's from.
He called me.
He worked with.
Okay. On
Like years, you know.
Okay.
Okay, because,
Yeah, so,
If they're
but
true.
he's doing really well.
That's.
no, that wasn't.
That's got to happen.
People that have used it.
Yeah, we did. Yeah.
You need to come by.
What'd you say?
He just-
Oh, man.
I'm good. You just-
We'll get in touch with him.
Thank you. I told him I'd see him. He's calling me.
It may take us,
Thank you.
Trying to get all the logistics together, getting out.
I did.
So I'm hoping in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be able to get
I didn't get it on.
It's preserved in northern part of the county, is its primary location, but it's also in so basically, so they have 3 ounces.
It's the closeout for the,
But it's gonna also provide services within the county. Really response times, but yet at the same time, give us that additional services and have it all.
Hey, lady. Well, I've already done it.
Yeah, very right.
Anything new come from it?
But I've already paid it, ordered it, everything. This guy's-
I didn't call part of it, but I didn't see anything new.
I hadn't seen anything on the headline, but I can always miss something. I just want to be sure.
Camera and audio is.
Oh!
I don't think you need it.
I did not know that.
I take it you didn't know that.
I did not know that. I was very concerned about